Hello. And so we've got lots of controversial topics we're talking about this week. We've talked about prostitution, which is in the broader context of sexual behavior. We've talked about drugs, alcohol, other mind-altering substances, nicotine, coffee. I mean, there's lots of things you could put into that category, some legal, some illegal. We've talked about guns, gun ownership, and we've talked about immigration. And so to round out the discussion, I mentioned that this year we're taking a little more head on the topic of abortion, which we started last week in our discussion of healthcare. Some groups like the World Health Organization say abortion is healthcare. It should be viewed in that lens. It's a healthcare procedure like any other, so it should be accessible, it should be approachable, it should be safe and effective. Others view abortion very differently. It's not a healthcare procedure, it is the taking of a life. And so obviously those differences in perspective lead to very different moral arguments that you're going to make and the evidence you're going to use to back it up. What I want to do this week is put this again in the context of personal liberty versus kind of societal good. And so in this sense, it's a lot like the gun debate, or at least that's how I see it. So on one side, we have the ability for people to choose what they want to do, whether that's taking drugs or owning guns or immigrating or having an abortion, terminating an unwanted pregnancy. Those are things that people may choose to do. They may find it to be, the best thing for them at that time, bring them the most utility. There are other people who disagree with it, don't like it, find it a repugnant act, and they're going to choose not to do that. But it's within this personal choice, right? And so there's value in letting people choose what they want to do, just like there's value in letting people choose whether they want to have guns or not, or do drugs or not, or engage in sexual behaviors or not. Some people will choose to do them, other people will choose not to do it. That's the whole point. A market system lets people kind of sort along that dimension of, things that they want to do versus things that they don't want to do, things they place value on versus things that they don't. Now, all of the topics we're talking about this week, they weigh this personal liberty, this ability for individuals to choose for themselves what they want against the societal impact, the societal interest, the externalities that come from those decisions and the way they affect other people. And maybe that's through the spread of sexually transmitted infections. If we're talking about prostitution, maybe that's about mass shooting events. If we're talking about gun ownership or accidental gun deaths, maybe it's overdose deaths if we're talking about drugs, or property crime that comes with higher levels of drug use as people engage in crime to be able to afford drugs when they have an addiction to them and they don't have resources for it. So there's societal interest in a lot of these things. So with abortion, there's value in personal liberty. There's value in letting people choose what they want to do that's right for them. We're weighing that, like with all these other topics, against the societal interest in kind of what is for the greater good. What is the best thing to happen when we factor in the externalities? And I say this is a little like the gun debate in that for some people, that makes this actually an easy decision. And for other people, the trade-off is there, like it has been with all of our topics. So what I mean by that is depending on how you view abortion, if you view it as the taking of an innocent life, then the societal good is in preventing as much abortion as possible. And so we're weighing personal liberty against the societal good of protecting life. And, different places will weigh that trade-off differently. And so we'll have different places have different laws regarding abortion. That trade-off is there, right? If you view abortion as healthcare as not the taking of an innocent life, but as, part of women's healthcare ability to choose and maintain pregnancies or not. If you look at it through that lens, then there's quite a bit of evidence that accessible abortion has, I'm going to be careful about my language here. I mean, some of the evidence is, some of it is causal in nature. So access to abortion seems to lead to more participation of women in the workforce, higher earnings for women, lower poverty rates for children. There's a lot of empirical evidence that has been done in this realm. Some of the evidence is not causal in nature, it's more correlational. But a lot of these studies were actually done pretty carefully in that they're trying to pinpoint, as different states had different policies and changed them, how has that seemed to cause changes in those areas. These studies aren't perfect, and certainly no one study is gospel. Evidence builds, and we weigh it against counter evidence, and there's almost always, in cases like this, counter evidence as well that we can cite. So certainly keeping all of that in mind. If you view abortion as healthcare, it's much like if you view guns and more people having more guns as leading to less crime because there's more good guys with guns. We don't really have that trade-off anymore. It's a no-brainer that we should have more guns, because personal liberty says we'll let people choose, and if the societal good is for more guns, then hey, let everyone who wants to have a gun, and multiple guns and such. That's the strong Second Amendment sort of position we often hear in the US. It's a no-brainer for them, because for them, the societal good is to have more guns. So there's no trade-off there. So personal liberty is bolstered by the societal good and vice versa. The same is true if you view abortion as healthcare and you take the weight of evidence as pointing toward more access to abortion leads to better outcomes in terms of women's earnings, women's workforce participation, lower poverty rates, things like that I think we could all agree are good. Certainly lower poverty rates and higher earnings for women are good. There may be some debate over whether women's workforce participation going up or down is a good thing. Even setting that aside, if you agree on the other ones, and that the weight of the evidence points toward that, then you don't have this trade-off between individuals' right to choose and the societal good. So for people who are pro-choice in the abortion debate, it's a lot like people who are pro-Second Amendment, in that it's kind of a no-brainer for them. Yeah, this is letting people choose, which is a good thing in and of itself. It's also leading to better outcomes for society, so these two things bolster each other. And so it's a contentious issue, guns are, as is abortion. It's a great time for us to reflect a little bit. And I say that as, this is a great opportunity to test your own beliefs and your priors a little bit, right? This is a great opportunity to do that, because a lot of us, certainly myself, I come into debate about these sort of issues and my background, religious teachings, what I was taught as a child, it tends to point in one direction for one and in the other direction for the other. And so I enjoy our controversial week in the sense that I feel like just about everyone in the class should feel challenged this week. As in, if you feel like you're very libertarian, pro-personal liberty, that'll probably be tested on at least one of these topics. So, the really pro-personal liberty would say drugs should be legal because people should be able to make the choices of what they want to ingest in their bodies. abortion should be legal because people should be able to choose. Immigration should be, legal immigration should be easily accessible. People should be able to choose where they want to move their labor. Guns, people should be able to have guns. So basically, the really libertarian perspective is that the government shouldn't be restricting people. People should be able to make their choices on these things. And I think in some instances that lines up with kind of a conservative perspective in U.S. politics. So that would generally be true with guns, right? Pro Second Amendment, let people choose what they want. But in other instances, the traditional U.S. conservative would not be pro legalization of drugs or prostitution or widespread immigration or abortion. And if you come at things from a progressive U.S. politic, that sort of perspective, again, you're probably challenged on these issues as well, with at least one of these. If you see your kind of progressive vision as having fully self-fulfilled people who are able to make their own choices, control their own destiny, and the government's role is to support people and to knock down barriers and promote equity and things like that, that may sound really good when it comes to abortion for you, and that may sound good when it comes to legalizing drugs, perhaps prostitution. It probably conflicts with the way that you think about guns, though, right? Because the traditional, I'm avoiding using the term liberal because liberal in a classical sense is more libertarian. I'll use the word progressive. The left wing U.S. politics, the stance is that there should be gun control efforts, that guns shouldn't be as easily accessible as they are now. So I'm guessing everyone will feel at least challenged on one of these topics, maybe multiple topics, as we situate them on our spectrum of personal liberty versus societal good, and kind of thinking about what evidence is behind the importance of those societal interests and the personal choice interest at stake. So thanks for going through controversial topics week with me. Abortion is one that the Supreme Court is expected to rule on this case coming out of the state of Mississippi. There was a leaked draft of the opinion that indicates if that becomes the majority opinion of the court, then Roe v. Wade will be overturned and states will be able to outlaw abortion as they see fit. So we probably won't know that during this class, but within about a month of our class, we would expect that Supreme Court decision to come down. That's usually when the most controversial cases from the recent term come out in late June or so. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens if this is something that is put back into the political arena and states pass laws about abortion and restrictions on it, and kind of what the political implications of that will be, what the moral and economic implications of that will be, right? That's what we're here for in this class. So we'll continue, but we won't deal with such controversial topics as our sex, drugs, and rock and roll sort of week that we had this week. Talk to you guys soon.